Hi everyone, and welcome to tonight's installment of a Core Diet webinar. Tonight we are going to be speaking on the art of snacking. My name is Jamie Windrow. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist and the Director of Nutrition Programming at the Core Diet and QT2 Systems. Thank you again for joining us. If you have any questions, please just wait to the end of the webinar and you can type all of your questions in the chat area and I will be sure to address every single one of them. Just a note before we begin, this is a topic that can be geared towards a number of populations, and tonight it really is geared towards the endurance athlete, those that are actually training more than 10+ hours per week. So think about someone maybe training for a marathon, half Ironman, full Ironman, ultras, those types of events. Although a large majority of these slides can be applicable to other populations, recommendations would and can vary for any of the other groups, such as children, older adults, pregnant women, obese or overweight individuals, the fitness enthusiast, someone that's just maybe working out a half an hour to an hour a day, and any type of athlete training less than 10 hours a week. We're going to discuss a number of things tonight. We'll do a quick review of the core foods concept, then we'll get into the evolution of snacking and what the research says. We'll discuss both sides of the coin because you probably have read in numerous blogs, articles, publications, there's always the disadvantages and advantages and the pros and cons of snacking. What snacking means to the athletes, the different categories that I personally use of snacking, which include, but not limited to, the core ratio equation, as well as some guidelines and tips. The core foods concept. So in general, over at the Core Diet, we like to choose foods with the highest nutrient density throughout the day. This is especially true between workouts when we are not training a swim, bike, or run or any other type of endurance workout. Things that are quote-unquote natural, minimally processed with nothing chemically altered. Thinking fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, nuts, seeds, healthy oils, and the occasional fermented dairy. Why do we want to do this? We want to stimulate recovery between workouts with protein. We would like to provide adequate phytonutrients such as vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and good fats for optimal health. And we want to keep the blood sugar stable by choosing low glycemic carbohydrates. I mentioned one of the goals is to keep the blood sugar stable throughout the day. The goal of that is so we can have energy, we can avoid fatigue, we can have a strong immune system, and we do that by choosing foods that are low on the glycemic index scale. This numerical scale is used to indicate how fast or how high a particular food can raise our blood sugar. A food with a low GI will typically prompt a moderate raise in blood sugar levels, and a food with a high would cause our blood sugars to spike, therefore making our pancreas work overtime and putting a lot of insulin into the bloodstream to bring it down. The low glycemic is less than 55. This is just an FYI. Moderate glycemic is anywhere between 55 and 85. And high glycemic is anything higher than 85. Higher glycemic index foods such as grains and refined sugars will cause the blood sugar levels to spike, which I just spoke about a little bit before. And examples of that would be bagel, bread, potatoes, cereals, things like rice, any of those things, as well as a performance drinks and fuels. Here's just a quick chart to show the difference between a high and a low blood response to a higher low glycemic index food. The light blue is what happens when we have something, for example, like a bagel. And something with the dark blue would be something if we had a good balanced protein and vegetable meal. And you can see that there's a slight rise. It's never going to be a perfectly straight line. But we do want to avoid those high peaks and valleys. So getting to the evolution of snacking. The definition of snack, according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, is a small amount of food eaten between meals. quote-unquote snacks were essentially created out of necessity in the 1930s. Food companies needed to provide an affordable food and were able to make this possible using the cheapest ingredients. And actually, the term snacking dates back to around the 1960s. Back then, it wasn't really a main focus of the day or an actual activity as we might see it today in many in society. Snacking was just a solution to some hunger pains or a brief rest between lunch and dinner. They would choose items such as an apple, or a child might choose a glass of milk or even a cookie, which isn't necessarily the most nutritionally balanced snack, but children in those days definitely depended upon play to burn away those calories, unlike today where many of them are sitting in front of the TV or playing with electronics. In the 1970s, snacking gained momentum, and those few bites between meals turned into a supersized portion of food. Barry Popkin, a professor of nutrition at the University of North Carolina, states in a study that was conducted, over the past 4 decades, children and adults have increased the number of snacks they eat, and snacking represents about 25% of our caloric intake, which is probably even higher now. That was a few years ago. In 2008, the U.S. consumed 68.1 billion in packaged snack food. This is up from 60 billion in 2004. And we all know that if you go to any type of event or occasion, birthday parties, holidays, all of these events are surrounded by food. Snacks are everywhere, whether in your cars, purse, gym bags, lockers, diaper bags, briefcases, desks, etc. What the research says. The research says that it could be one of the main culprits behind obesity statistics. Now, we know now, we've seen those charts, over 30% of the current U.S. population is obese. It really depends on what research study you're actually looking at to determine whether or not snacking is a pro or a con. We've seen both, and it really depends on what the group is, what they're eating for their meals, and what they're actually choosing for snacks. As you can see, we haven't really determined what constitutes a snack in terms of the actual components of it. From 1977 to 2006, adults added on average 570 calories per day through snacking, and the population is now eating 3 or more snacks per day, increased from 11% to 42%. The driving force of this increased snacking actually has little to do with actual hunger. It's rather social, or the need to bond with family and friends, such as all those events and occasions that we talked about, or emotional to do boredom or loneliness. Now, just so we can speak about both sides of what's out there, because everyone has a different opinion on whether or not people in general should include snacking throughout the day. The disadvantages, the possible disadvantages of snacking, are weight gain, inconvenience when it comes to healthy snacking, which we'll discuss in a minute, constipation, which deals more with unhealthy snacking, grazing, and dental caries. Now, weight gain is sort of obvious. That could be one of the one of the disadvantages of snacking. If you are eating more than you're burning or more than your body needs, you're going to gain weight, regardless of where the calories are coming from. And that's what a lot of these research studies focus on. The inconvenience is speaking more in terms of healthy snacking. Healthy snacking can be inconvenient. This is not necessarily my opinion. This is the opinion of those that are against snacking. Can be inconvenient for those who already find it difficult to find time to prepare and cook main meals. Planning snacks force you to do extra grocery shopping, portioning out the snacks, and then spending time putting them together. And many in this type of group that would find snacking inconvenient would prefer to find snacks that are more of a grab-and-go nature. Constipation, which is tied with unhealthy snacking. If you think about unhealthy snacking, those foods typically are fatty and low-fiber snacks that can increase your chance of becoming constipated. These empty calorie snacks are filled with calories and devoid of fiber, essentially. I mean, if you think about things like deli meats, candy bars, chips, even cheddar cheese cubes, the processed ones. Another possible disadvantage of snacking would be grazing. Grazing can sort of be defined as eating small meals and snacks frequently instead of large meals infrequently. The quote-unquote, one of the definitions might be eat little and eat often. This is something that a lot of dietitians and nutritionists used for a very long time, many years ago. Even when I first got into the field, there was a huge push for grazing, eating 6 mini meals rather than 3 large meals and 2 to 3 snacks. And this is to keep your energy level up and to avoid overeating healthy food later on in the day. The problem with grazing is that the amount of food being consumed is not quote-unquote little. And we have become a snack-obsessed society. This is in general. And we are now filled with a nation of snackers. I even see it with the families and children that I work with. And many of the foods being eaten are also not the healthiest options. Grazing can work. Obviously, there's benefits to it for some people, depending on your situation and your genetics. But these are all in general slides right here. Another disadvantage to snacking is possible dental caries or dental cavities or tooth decay, however you want to call it. The minute certain foods, specifically sugar, some sugars and starches, are placed in your mouth, the bacteria makes the tooth enamel more acidic, and that acid starts the process that leads to cavities. The worst culprits are what they call the fermentable carbohydrates. These would be things like breads, crackers, even bananas and cereal, as well as the more obvious, the cookies, cakes, candy, and soft drinks. Our mouths remain in an acidic state for about 20 minutes before returning to a neutral pH. And the more we eat, the more frequent teeth are attacked and likely to decay. This is something that I really discuss with a lot of families. Again, this is geared towards athletes, but I always think it's an interesting topic when talking about snacking because it's very much overlooked. It doesn't mean that you're going to get dental caries if you eat some of these foods. It's that constant grazing. This is really associated with the slide before of the grazing, where you're just eating sort of a little bit all day long, and your mouth never really has that time to get back to that neutral pH state, which is what we really want to get to it. So I really think that the dental caries and the grazing really go hand in hand. So the problem for the endurance athlete, at QT2 Systems, we have a lot of, we focus a lot on nutrition, so I don't hear about it too much from this group, but over the years I have heard this time and time again, something like, I don't need to worry about what I eat, I burn so many calories in training. I specifically hear this more from the typical, maybe tall, lean, male cyclist who has trouble gaining weight, someone that doesn't really necessarily have to worry about their body composition and they can just eat whatever they want. Or something to the extent of, I need to carb up for my workouts tonight, which I see a lot with beginner triathletes, specifically training for the Ironman, that think that they're constantly needing to carb up in between the workouts, the meals and snacks, heavy on the grain-like foods. So too many of these grain-like foods are in society, and it's easy for an endurance athlete to grab these types of snacks in between workouts. And when you look at adding those types of grain-like snacks to what we're already using for fuels in training, we're really left with no healthy oil, fats, no antioxidants, no protein, no nutrient-dense foods in the diet. And so what ends up happening is these grain-like foods or snacks tend to replace the opportunity to get in more nutrient-dense core foods. And those core foods, as a reminder, are those minimally processed fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, etc. So now we can go to the other side and discuss the advantages of snacking. Now, one of the first advantages, and this is especially true, for the athlete, which we'll get to in a minute, is a increased energy and nutrients. So, if you have a healthy snack that's made up of some sort of good carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, things like, fruits and vegetables, coupled with protein and healthy fats, increases your energy levels for a longer period of time than sugary snacks do. And this is because the sugar will cause your blood sugar to spike, as we spoke before, then crash, leaving you hungry and lethargic. Appetite or binge control. This is sort of a big one that's been talked about a long time, especially it's looked at in research as well. And, you know, what they look at to see is if snacks in between your main meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, do help to control overeating or binge eating at the next meal. And what I see a lot, even with friends and family members as well as out in society, is that people do very well from the moment they wake up until nighttime. And they almost starve themselves a little bit and don't have that snack in between the meals. But by the time they get to dinner, they eat a very large meal, more than they probably need. They're stuffed, and then they just keep on snacking in the evening. So I do believe that one of the advantages of snacking, and I see it, is this appetite or binge control, you know, in between meals, and will also help maintain appropriate blood sugar throughout the day. Satisfaction for small appetites. This is a very small advantage if you think of not just children, but also some adults that just don't have huge appetites. Snacking can be a way that they can enjoy all their meals. Someone like that prefers has these small appetites would be someone that would eat more 6 small meals a day. And lastly, another advantage of snacking in general is better concentration. So we've done a ton of research on this as well, and adding healthy snacks between meals really can increase focus and performance, both at school and at work, as well as for children and adults. I don't know if you've ever been stuck at your desk, or you're working long hours and you just can't get away from the computer. Maybe you're preparing a presentation and you just say, you know, 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes, and next thing you know, you've gone 4 or 5 hours without eating anything, and you just can't figure out why. You just can't tie up loose ends on this project that you're working on. And it really has to do with this right here, this better concentration. That's when I always say, shut the computer, go get something to eat, and you will perform much, much better. So here we go. Now we're actually going to get into some of the athletic stuff of why we're here tonight. So high endurance training increases energy requirements and protein need, as well as the demand for some vitamins and minerals. And why most physically active people can meet these requirements through a nutrient-rich diet, many athletes, the ones that we're specifically talking about, those that are training more than 10+ hours a week, need something extra, especially during periods of high training. Now, in general, this is just approximate, and this is what we speak about a lot at the core diet. When you are training high volume, approximately 75% of that increased need for carbohydrates, and I should have put that down for carbohydrates, are met through your pre-workout fuels, your training fuels, and your recovery drink. This is approximate. It might be 65%, 70%. It's different for each person, but we'll just say about 75%. The other 25% is where you need to make up those needs, whether you increase the size of your meals or snacks. Now, the exception to that would be, I work with some athletes that might be trying to really decrease body composition goals, and we let that 25% sort of not get fully met, and that's where we create a calorie deficit for weight loss. Now, the number of calories your body burns each day will increase and decrease dramatically between your different training cycles. You know, between lower volume training weeks and cycles of peak training, such as right before races, they're gonna drastically change. As your training volume increase, your athletes can supply some of that additional energy needs by increasing with the size of the meals, as I just mentioned. But in general, I find that this is slightly impractical just by increasing your meals alone to meet those requirements. It's just generally athletes just don't have that type of appetite to add an extra portion or whatnot at that meal, and this is when healthy snacking really can play a vital role in maintaining and promoting optimal nutrition. And, you know, I always say, and don't ever forget, just always to listen to your body as well. You know, if you're someone that's really trying to minimize or change your eating habits and you stick to, you know, one snack between morning and afternoon, but skip the evening snack, also listen to your body. If you're getting to the point where you are extremely hungry, you have hunger pains, you can't concentrate, or you're lethargic, that's when your body's telling you something. So sometimes rules do have to get broken by listening to what your body's telling you. Categories of snacking. So this is one of my favorites. So this is how I personally like to break snacking down. We start with the first one, which is convenient snacks, and then we get into whole food snacks and mini meals, which can slightly go into the same category. Pre-workout fuels, which are snacks. I do consider those a snack. They're important. They have different, you know, different goals, but it still goes under my snack criteria. And then your empty calorie snacks. Convenient snacks are just that. They're when convenience is needed. So when planning core diet meals or healthy meals, depending on what type of food intake you're taking in, it's when it's just not possible. Whether you're traveling or you have the unexpected pop-up, a work meeting, doctor's appointment, family commitment, etc., or your training is just crazy, it's a high volume day and you're just really on the go, going from the pool to the bike and whatnot. When it's not utilized is in your day-to-day regular routine when PPP is possible. I call PPP planning, prepping, and packing. That's when I generally, this is where I have to work the most with a lot of people I work with. I see convenient snacks and foods being utilized too much when an athlete actually has control over what they're eating. And in addition to just the basic definition, a convenient snack is, we'd also like to see them meet what we call core ratio equation. And this sort of helps because it gives some sort of guidelines, because convenient snack, okay, that could mean anything. So for these types of foods, these are the ones that are man-made, that have a label, it's something you purchase in a store, there's minimal prep, and we're looking for the core ratio to come out less than 2. And I'll give you some examples of this. This rule does not apply to anything fresh, such as fruits and vegetables, anything that doesn't have a food label, obviously proteins, things like that. For any type of recovery drink that you're drinking, whether it's Endurox or Ultragen or Recoverite, that has a completely separate purpose, so that would also not meet the core ratio equation. So what is it? This gives you a little picture of what this equation is, and it's the total carbohydrates plus sugar minus fiber divided by fat plus protein, and we're looking for something less than 2. Now, here's a food label. I didn't know what this was, but this is actually a food label. You can see up in the left-hand corner under the nutrition facts. This is a flatbread bread, just one sort of wrap from Joseph's Bakery. You can look at them online. They're in terms of wraps, they have some good low-carb ones that have one of the better profiles I've seen out there for wraps. And so if you look at this food label and you actually look at the composition, you can see that the total carbohydrates for one flatbread is 15 grams. It has 7 grams of fiber, less than 1 gram of sugar, 2.5 grams total fat, 7 grams of protein. So if you plug those numbers into the equation, 15 plus 1 minus 7 divided by 2.5 plus 7, the core ratio is approximately 1. So this would actually pass that test. And this could be something which I would consider a convenient food. It's not bread that you're making in your house. It comes in a package. There's lots you can do with it, which we'll get to on my example page. And the whole reason behind why the equation is set up this way is we start with carbohydrates because those have the highest glycemic impact on the blood. We add in the plus sugar, because those are the sugars that are counted again because it gives that extra glycemic response compared to naturally existing sugars. Fiber has no impact on blood sugar, and the fat and protein are actually going to slow down that blood sugar response. And I don't know if any of you have seen it, but there's been a few articles out. The nutrition labels are changing, and they're going to be a little bit clearer, which I love. And you will actually be able to see the, what's the natural sugars, what are the added sugars, which will be nice. The other additional qualities you want to look for, because a ratio equation just gives you an indication of glycemic response, is something that you need to look at the label for, because this core ratio equation tells you nothing about the quality of the food. You want to look for things like a low saturated fat content, less than 5 grams per serving. You want to look for all of those sort of additives, ingredients such as high fructose corn syrup, any types of artificial colors that always begin with a color and a number, artificial flavors, hydrogenated fats, etc. We're looking for the highest nutrient density as possible for processed foods. And again, these are for convenience foods, highest nutrient density as possible for a processed food that comes in a package. This is, I've used these slides a couple times before, so if you've watched my webinars, you may have seen this slide before. I always give an example of the McDonald's cheeseburger, because this actually passes the core ratio equation if you plug in the numbers. And the reason why is largely because of the fat and the protein, so it sort of skews this equation. We would not consider this a core diet friendly convenient food. This is when you have to be a detective and look, the fat's 12 grams. It doesn't show it on here, but the saturated fat is actually higher than 5. And then this is just being a smart individual and knowing that that's probably not the best option out there. Still under convenient food, so convenient snacks could be anything like a Larabar, energy bars, picky bars, those types of bars that use raw ingredients. I love. Larabars have some other bars now that they've been brought on the market, so I usually recommend sticking to their original ones that are more date and nut based. Elevate Me bars, those types of bars out there are great choices for convenient foods. Traveling, and this isn't just for traveling. This could just be for your day, a day that you have a busy work schedule or training schedule. Whey protein powder, Isopure is a good quality one. Biochem. Things like dried fruit, nuts, nut butters. We have a whole, if you want to go to our website, we have a whole section on this that gives more details and other options. There's another few products that I like that you can buy at sort of a Trader Joe's or a Whole Foods type of food, and those are freeze-dried fruits are really great. Those are convenient for busy days. And then any types of things like olives, dried edamame. There's some decent crackers out there, Fiber One or Kasha crackers, things like Way Better snacks. Again, these are not our first choice for things to have day in and day out. These are sort of for convenience and special occasions. And I always give this, when in an absolute real travel bind where you have no other option to buy anything but go through fast food, I get this question all the time, what would be the best of the worst? And it would be maybe something like an egg white sandwich at Dunkin' Donuts. Any of the egg sandwiches really at any of these fast foods are always the best of the worst, if that makes sense. Number 2 in our categories of snacking, this is my favorite, this is the optimal choice, would be under the category of whole food snacks and mini meals. So this category is where you would want to choose your snacks from that are day in and day out routine, when you have the proper planning and the time and prepping for all of that. With athletes that have multiple daily workouts, it can be difficult, as we mentioned before, to consume those adequate calories at meals alone. So these whole foods and snacks and or mini meals is really a crucial way to fill those nutritional gaps, because there will be nutritional gaps, especially in the micronutrient category, your vitamins and minerals and antioxidants. These are also called planned ahead snacks, I might call them, or little light meals. I did not come up with. I read that from another dietitian. I thought that was a great name for it. And they're either made or in advance or planned in advance, and you have the ingredients at hand to make them when it's time for that snack. Now, a good rule of thumb for these sort of mini meals or whole food snacks are to have 2 of the macronutrients. So out of the protein, fat, and carbs, always aim to have 2 of those, either 2. So instead of just having an apple, maybe have an apple with a tablespoon of almond butter. If you're going to have some coconut yogurt, which is a great source of micronutrients, has no protein, maybe you add some protein in it with a scoop of protein powder, or you have an egg, something like that. An avocado on a Joseph wrap. So you're getting the fat and the carbs. So you're having 2 of the macronutrients is usually one of the goals. It's going to give you that feeling of satiety, make you feel fuller, as well as give you those micronutrients that are really the foundation of health. And when I think about mini meals or little light meals, those are somewhere between snacks and meals, meaning they're not as small as a snack and they're not as big as a meal, somewhere in between. And what I often recommend for a lot of people that can't sit down and eat a really good mindful lunch, whether it's due to their work schedule, family schedule, and or training schedule, is to break a lunch into 2 mini meals. And I even personally do that quite often. So things that we're looking for, some of these are more meals, some of these are more snacks that would fall under the optimal whole food snack category. This is just a few. There's thousands out there. But things like roasted pumpkin seeds, roast it with a dash of coconut oil and sprinkle your favorite spice or herb. This would be a lighter snack. Or some edamame, which gives you 11 grams of protein and a half a cup of fresh edamame. This next one would be more of a mini meal, quinoa, hummus, and raw veggies, mixing some quinoa in with hummus and using raw veggies, dipping it into. Rather than just doing the good old plain raw veggies and hummus, the quinoa is going to give you those complete proteins. It's a seed. It has all the essential amino acids that you need. Any type of bean salad. I love bean salads, and depending on your sensitivity to them, you might have to time this with your training schedule. But a good fresh bean salad could have different types of vegetables such as carrots, sugar snap peas, chickpeas. Add a little bit of oil and red vinegar, and you're good to go. We have some other really great bean salads in the Core Diet recipes. You can just go to the website. Everyone has access to them, such as the 3-bean salad or the tomato, basil, and white bean salad. It's a great thing to have in between lunch and dinner. Chickpea avocado salad. You're having smashed avocado, chickpeas, and other vegetables such as carrots, and maybe a little bit of feta cheese. And again, you're getting some fats, you're getting some carbs, and even some protein. The apple salad is a Core Diet recipe, as well as all of these other ones listed below. Bake sweet potato chips and add some yogurt for a dip. You're getting your carbohydrates and your protein. And you can see this, so on and so forth. You're having some lentil with poached egg. Again, you're having some protein and carbs. The third category of snacking is, I mentioned before, I consider these snacks because they're calories, you're still taking them in, are your pre-workout fuels. And these are something that you consume within 1 hour of any training session, whether it's swim, bike, or run, whether morning or night, whether 1 hour or 6 hours. The goal of a pre-workout fuel is to fuel your training session. Things that we're looking for are things easily digestible, low fat, low fiber, and low to moderate protein. It's okay if it has some protein in it. When I give this recommendation, what you're looking for is it for not to be highly protein-based. Like a yogurt before a training session wouldn't necessarily be the best choice because it's lower in carbs, and it won't maybe fuel you as much as it something else could. You want it readily available for energy, so that also kind of falls under the easily digestible. It goes to your system really fast, so it actually gets into your body so you can actually utilize that for energy. And in terms of nutrient density, I apologize, this is a typo. It should say nutrient density isn't as important. So we're not looking for high nutrient density with the pre-workout fuel. We're looking more for these goals that are easily digestible. And I'll give you some examples. These examples are something that you would want to, with the exception of maybe the medjool dates, these are types of things that you would want to avoid choosing as snacks throughout the day. Big Newtons, whether pre-packaged or homemade. I have a great homemade recipe from scratch that you can freeze on the website. A slice of toast or two, same thing with organic frozen waffles, rice pudding. Alan Lim makes a really good homemade rice bar that he uses with the cycling teams that you can use. Even some medjool dates if you're in a low volume period, or maybe you're far enough away from your race and you want to fuel pre and during a little bit more naturally, medjool dates can work out well. A Nature Valley bar, and then of course performance products, which some athletes might use in sort of the early morning when they're not really hungry. They just sort of wake up, pop a gel, and go. And our fourth category of snacking is the empty calorie snacks. These are what all of those disadvantages were that we talked about in the beginning of the presentation. They were always really talking about these types of snacks, these prepackaged foods made with cheap and mechanically processed ingredients. They're generally inexpensive, although not always, and more often than not, I see them filled with genetically modified ingredients, artificial colors, flavors, all those types of additives, preservatives, etc. Lots of them can be fatty, but most of them tend to be low in fiber, and again, can cause that constipation, as we mentioned before. They provide minimal micronutrients, antioxidants, phytonutrients, etc. And again, these are where these disadvantages come in. They cause fatigue, weight gain, and all the disadvantages again that we listed before. Here's just I just wanted to give a couple sample menus of what it looked like if someone was going to maybe rely on some snacks as well as convenient snacks and food. So if you look at this particular day, the 2,000 calorie a day, I can't remember what the volume was for the training week, but it was pretty significant. It was obviously more than 10 hours. And they started their day off with some training. And you can see that the first real meal doesn't come until around 9 o'clock, and this particular athlete needed to rely on a convenience food on this particular day each week, once a week, and it was due to a team meeting that they'd have at Starbucks afterwards. So she chose this time to choose one of those convenient snacks, and we decided upon the best option that we had, and that was the Starbucks egg white wrap as well as the fruit blend, which is just the cup. You can see her other snack choices throughout the day with the raw veggies and hummus, and then a very nutrient-dense meal. So you can see how this athlete, protein 22%, fat 23%, carbs 55%. It really is head-on, pretty good in terms of the diet and the numbers and where the macronutrient grams are coming from. So to me, this would be a perfect example of how snacking is really necessary for this particular athlete, given that she's up at 5:30 but doesn't even really get to eat until 9. So she has to fill in those gaps later on in the day, and it just wasn't possible any other way through her meals. Here is another example of another athlete starting off the day with yoga and not really running and doing a long run until later on in the day. This athlete also had some whole food snacks as well as a convenient snack. This is the convenient snack is in the dark blue, the Trader Joe Buffalo Jerky. And again, the same as the day before. All the other meals that this person had control of were made himself at his home, and except for the one convenient snack. So again, looking at the breakdown: 22% protein, 59% carbs, almost 20% fat. The percentages are really good as well. So just giving some guidelines for how you can break those snacks up and when you should choose from them. These are just sort of some basic guidelines. So snacks in general should primarily come from that whole food snack category. You want to plan ahead and think of these as small planned meals, just like you plan out your breakfast, lunch, and dinners. No more than one convenient snack per day and no more than 4 days per week. You're going to break that sometimes, just depending on schedule. But if you try to stick with this each week, that 4 days during the week, you can rely on a convenient snack, but only, one per day, but only 4 days per week. It's really going to open up your whole world of not only cooking, but the variety of the foods that you're eating. You really will see this at the end of the day in performance. That one convenient snack per day, no more than 4 days a week, does not include your pre-workout fuels. Your pre-workout fuels sort of stay before all your training sessions. We generally don't touch those because you don't want to ever be nutritionally limited in any of your training sessions. So as long as you keep those and make sure that you're staying within the guidelines of really 1 hour before. You don't want to have your pre-workout fuel 3 hours before. Empty calorie snacks. These should be saved for special occasions when you're not trying to actively to lose weight. And the further out from race day is always the most optimal time to have it, but obviously life goes on and there's lots of occasions and stuff. So really try to be in a workout window for these empty calorie snacks. For example, if you know you're going to a birthday party and you're going to indulge in some snacks, some birthday cake, then I would get your bike or run or swim, whatever workout you're doing before that event. And that way you're in a post-workout window after, and the effect is minimized of those sugars somewhat. So some other guidelines that you can sort of use in terms of snacking is, so make a list and categorize. Not only actually planning your snacks for the week, but just when you have a moment, take 30 minutes and sit down and just write a list, type it up, print it, put it on the side of your guidelines of all the options of snacks that you think that you would like to enjoy in your diet, and whether or not you have time to make them. Just make the list, have the ingredients there, go to the Core Diet website. You can look under snacks. There's a bunch there. You can follow us on Pinterest. We have a whole snack category. You can Google paleo snacks. Any paleo snacks would work as well. Make a list so you can see that you have something to choose from. And also try to categorize in general of your more protein-based snacks, your more fat-based snacks. So your things that might include nuts or avocados would be in your fat-based snacks. And really try to make sure that you're planning your snacks for variety. So I always think, like, if you end up having, avocado one day, the next day maybe not choose the avocado or a higher fat one. Try to mix it up and make sure that there is variety there. Eating mindfully and avoid the grab and go when possible. One of our dietitians did a wonderful webinar on eating mindfully. If you have time to sit there and watch it, it's in the recorded webinar section of the member area. And this is something that I truly believe, and even research has shown this as well, of where snacking can really have a negative effect. It's the distraction, not really listening to your hunger cues. If you actually really are hungry, eating too fast, eating on the go, eating more than your body really needs. I'm seeing this a lot with the children that I work with, and they're just snacking all day, and they're just snack, 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 and they're running around the playground and eating and not sitting down, and it's all population. So really try to, when possible, to eat mindfully. Take that time to sit down and give yourself a few minutes to eat. And really, the grab and go, really try to save that for, again, when you have to rely on convenience foods or not your day-to-day. If you're finding that your life is full of always eating, grabbing, doing the grab and go, then, it might be a good time to sort of sit down and see, what can change, where can we move things, to really give yourself that time to sit down and enjoy that snack. Use the Core Diet macronutrient calculator to determine needs. So every person on this webinar, every person that I talk to will have different needs. Someone on the line right now might be someone that needs to include, you know, 3 whole food snacks throughout the day. Maybe someone else only needs to include 1. So first, I would suggest going and using that macronutrient calculator, plugging in your volume, plugging in your body composition metrics, really finding out where you are in terms of the intake that you need for your body to perform the number of training hours that you're doing. If you have any weight loss goals or body composition goals, you can plug that in as well. And that really is a good place to start. And then from there, you don't have to plan your meals according to every gram of protein, fat, and carbs every single day. But I do suggest sitting down and just trying to write 2 or 3 example days, maybe one that's on a Saturday when you're doing your long ride, one that's on a Monday that's more of a recovery day, and then maybe one other day during the week where it's sort of a moderate training day, maybe you have a bike and a run. And try to write 3 example days and really see what your body needs in terms of grams per gram according to the macronutrient calculator. It's great exercise. It's probably going to take, you know, an hour or 2, realistically probably 2 hours. But it really will give you a good starting point to really see where you're at, and that will sort of help in terms of planning around those training schedules. Really try to choose snacks based on nutritional benefits and closer to the original state. So this just falls under that whole food snacks, you know, things that are minimally processed, things that, you know, aren't packaged up or, you know, really made in a factory. And if you always keep in mind that snacks should fill in nutrient gaps, not relieve boredom, stress, or use as a reward. A few other tips. This is just a couple things I thought of at the last minute that I usually go out there with some snacks of things to keep on hand. I love freezing fruit and eating it frozen. And this is a great way to not throw out and to minimize waste. For, you know, getting out of the winter and coming up on the warmer months, for those of you that are up north, and farmers markets are going to be buzzing sooner than later, and we can tend to go a little bit overboard with what we buy. So I always say, you know, when you go pick up all your fruit, take about 25% of it and freeze it. And, you know, eating raspberries, grapes, things like that frozen are going to force you to eat slower, because you will have to chew them a little bit more. They're colder, so you're not going to put as much in your mouth. So it's definitely a great way to really sit down and enjoy a snack. Protein. Don't always go straight to animal protein. You know, it's so easy when you think, I got to increase protein, I need chicken, or I need fish, or I need eggs. You know, if you're not already including some non-meat sources, please do so. It's such a great way to really increase variety and really make sure that you're just getting a plethora of micronutrients. I always say, you know, eat meat once a week, or I don't say, that's not my line. It's Nutrition Month, if you didn't know, and that's always one of their big campaigns. So really try to include some vegetarian meals and snacks from time to time. You know, just as an example, 1 cup of lentils provide 18 grams of protein. That's a ton. I saw a fellow colleague of mine, dietitian, recommends always keeping some sort of bean puree on hand. You know, you can dip vegetables in it. You can spread it on a Joseph wrap and sort of have it as a sandwich. There's tons you can do with it, and it's got great carbohydrates, great protein content. There's a ton of different beans out there, and they all slightly have a different nutrition composition. So if you're interested in that, you know, you'd have to look each one of those up. Lastly, so there's no magic number of meals and snacks to have each day. Unfortunately, I wish I could give that for every single person. But the fact is that some people need to include snacks between meals throughout the day, and some do not. And right now, I'm making that statement as people, not athletes. Some people are genetically built to perform better on 6 small meals rather than 3 large meals and 2 to 3 snacks, and some are not. But I will say that the majority of high-volume endurance athletes do need to include snacks. There's very few high-volume athletes that I work with that I would say that they do not need to. And at the end of the day, the quality of snacking is more important than whether or not you choose to snack. And with that, Hopefully I didn't go over too much. If you have any questions, this would be a great time. If anyone's already typed it, you can type it directly into the chat. I will repeat the question out loud so everyone can hear and then answer it. If there is no questions, then I will obviously just end the webinar, but I will definitely wait to see what we've got. Okay, so no one's typing any questions, and I didn't think, this is pretty straightforward, but hopefully, I always like everyone that attends my webinars, so hopefully you've walked away with some type of new knowledge. And I think one of the most helpful things that I think that most people really get out of that is kind of looking at the categories of snacking and really sort of sitting down and looking at your diet, because I will say I see a lot of athletes, I don't want to say abusing, but overdoing it with the convenience snacks, especially with Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, all these, fabulous health food stores. You walk in and you go down those aisles and they just have all of these prepackaged foods that just look so amazing that are so expensive, and it's really easy to fill your cart up with all this organic, healthy packaged stuff, but a lot of that stuff is still considered convenience food. So I really think that sit down and look at your whole diet as a whole and think if you could kind of shift things around, and if it's the whole food snacks and mini meals, if your issue is that you don't have time to, you barely have time to cook dinner, never mind snacks, well, maybe just trying to make things in advance, or each week just having a goal of making one thing, like a bean salad that you can enjoy in a bunch of different ways. You could have a bean salad on its own as a snack cold. You could throw it in a wrap, add some tofu. You could add it over better greens and add some chicken, and finding ways that you can include it in other sort of meals to minimize the processing. So if no one has any questions, I will thank you again for joining. And if you haven't been to our member area, please do. We have we record every single webinar and put them in there, and there's a plethora of them. So please enjoy those if you're one of our members. And if you ever have a topic that you would love to hear more about or see myself or one of the other dietitians present on, please just send an email. You can contact me at jamie@qt2systems.com. That's Jamie, Jaime. And I'd love to hear from you guys. So with that, have a great night, and I hope to see you all soon. Thank you.